Welcome to Age of AI, Politics, Law, and Society, hosted by Medler Mema, Chris Lamont, and Young Diogenes, in association with the Global Governance Institute in Brussels.
Hello, I'm Chris Lamont, joining you today with Adalberto Gonzalez of Design Thinking Japan, a Tokyo-based AI company that provides companies with human-centered AI solutions. Adal has a wealth of expertise in AI as an AI engineer, having founded Accenture's first generative AI garage, which served as a model for GenAI studios worldwide. Today, Adal joins us to discuss Design Thinking Japan's 2025 AI Signals Report, which was just unveiled in April of this year. Hi, Adal. Welcome to the show. And I guess we'll go ahead and get started with my first question, which is, can you tell us a little bit about how you started working in AI? What got you interested in the field?
Thank you, Chris, for having me. So I think everything started back in my days when I was probably elementary school or before that. I was watching a movie. I'm from Mexico, and we have these local heroes that are called luchadores, the wrestlers, these guys with the mask, right? And there's one iconic that is called El Santo. This guy has these fantastic movies about fighting these creatures, the werewolf, the vampire people, right? So one of these movies, he is fighting evil. So he goes to this cave, picture it as the Mexican version of the Bat Cave, right?
Okay.
And there's one person there with a rope. I didn't know what he was, right? But I know he was wearing a robe and he has a lot of gadgets. So this person tells El Santo, hey, Santo, we need to catch the werewolf. Say, okay, right. What is he? Say, don't worry. And in the wall, there's these wall-to-wall lights, like blipping. Blip, 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 blip. From the center, pops out like a ticket. He turns it off and hands it over here. Mm-hmm. Here is you can find him, right? The Santo takes it and goes. In that moment, I remember stooding up, like, what happened? Who's this guy? What is this machine? How does that work? Is a person knows where this work is, told another one, blah, blah, blah. Then who wrote it? And if we fast forward, today, that's geolocation, the computer vision, geofencing, telemetry, digital twin, 5G, and all these emerging technologies that are today, my day-to-day. Yeah. So for me, that's the most vivid image, most vivid moment of what drives my interest, not only in AI, but in emerging technologies.
Right. So an early childhood interest in El Santo's adventures brought you into the world of AI. And that brought you to Accenture. I'd mentioned in the introduction that you founded the first generative AI garage there. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, the concept of generative AI garage, it's an evolution of many years of activities. Back then, when I was invited at Accenture to spark the efforts of innovation in Latin America, we were really building it. There was not really a playbook. This is what we want to do. This is what we have to do because it's a new ecosystem, new regulations, different point of views, even different challenges. In Latin America, you see people maybe in a taxi with some maybe cable holding something so you could have your cell phone, because that's creativity. That's something that you see. That means that also you cannot come with just any simplified or unnecessary version because they're very, let's say, skillful. We're very skillful to find things. So when I joined the Accenture, first thing that I discovered was the interest of everyone in the firm to do something different. So it happens that we built a very big community. I have the innovation team, but the team extended to hundreds of people that wanted to be part of it. Because of that, we founded the first application service innovation center, later the Nano Lab, later the Liquid Studio. And then as we were moving forward, seeing what is going to be the next adventure for our team, we started experimenting with these technologies called back then the transformers, right? The LLMs. And I have a few pictures of some friends working on OpenAI precisely.
Interesting.
And I typed it. I was studying it because they were so kind to show us, hey, you should try this. Imagine OpenAI trying to convince someone, hey, you should try this, right?
Right.
So we experimented. We did the research. I came up with a benchmark, and I told my leadership, hey guys, I think around 41% it will be the impact of technologies in our field. to be true, they look at me like I was crazy. Like, I think it's positive, but don't you think you're being optimistic? Quoting one of the leaderships from San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
3 days, that was Wednesday. On Friday, Satya released the Copilot impact, 47%. We were off by 4 points. Then we got the attention of all the firm. And because of that, we were ahead of the curve. Our team in Monterrey, were very ahead. So we started developing new proof of concepts, prototypes, early solutions, so we could early prove the business with tier 1 clients.
Right.
And I think that was very positive for the firm and for me, of course.
And you've moved from that experience at the forefront of innovation in Latin America to Tokyo, where you are the AI strategic advisor for Design Thinking Japan. And Design Thinking puts an emphasis on human-centered AI and AI acceleration. Can you tell us what that means?
Yes, when I was started back then, even when I was located in Latin America, let's say the appetite for innovation came mostly from the United States, from North America. And that was a very positive situation because we were serving Fortune or tier 1 clients. And because of that, we could, let's say, transmit some of those knowledge knowledge to Latin America and to the rest of the world. So it happened because of a family situation and a personal aspiration, we decided to move to Japan. Design thinking existed since 2012 there, and I've been advising them in, let's say, industrial applications. But recently, with this boom of AI, more questions, or the insights or questions or interest move to the artificial intelligence field. So then the question the invitation from Brittany Arthur, who's the CEO, said like, hey, I think we need you more invested on this. And of course, the adventure is great because through Design Thinking Japan, I think what makes it truly unique is their end-to-end approach. Unlike traditional, one thing about Design Thinking Japan, what makes them truly unique in the AI landscape is their end-to-end approach. Unlike traditional consultancies that sometimes focus on technology, start with technology and then there, or design firms that never go beyond concept, Design Thinking Japan has this integrated practice that covers the complete technology life cycle. And one thing that I like, or that we share, is that we start with the human need. What is it that drives you? What is it that is motivating you? Why do we have to invest on these 4 months, 4 days, for whatever reason, to end up with something that maybe was not necessary from the beginning?
Right.
So these same principles, I was applying it back then in my days in other firms and other companies. What is the right it, I call it, and then let's build it right. So something Japan has been a catalyst here with all the interaction with tier 1 firms here in Japan. And excited to be here, honestly.
That's great. And also you mentioned there are lots of instances where tools are created, but they don't really have a purpose. Right. Or we don't know kind of what kind of human-centered application they might have.
Absolutely. You should maybe comment like the times that I visited innovation centers where they show me a piece of technology that is wonderful. Okay, I grant that. It's amazing. But my question is, who's going to use that? They say anyone, or we don't know. Or the most typical is, we're having challenges commercializing this. Yes, and I can tell why. We could talk on a full other episode about this.
That would be a good topic. But the reason why I brought you here today is last month I had the pleasure of attending Design Thinking Japan's unveiling of the 2025 AI Signals Report, in which kind of core pillars were identified to keep an eye out for AI innovations in kind of the coming year. First of all, before getting into the contents of the report, can you tell us what motivated you to come up with a more comprehensive and forward-looking report on developments in AI?
Yes, absolutely. So I think because of my personality. I think it's me who gives the title and the personality to my work. I always live in the intersection of the cutting edge, but also the application. What is this thing that we will do that will move us forward enough that we could implement it, but also not so common that everybody can do it, right? With this intersection in mind, I decided that, or I observed that there was not a real, let me call it map, right? Where to go, where to do correct investments, where to focus our efforts. So what we did was very interesting, right? Rather than relying solely on traditional research methods, I developed what I call synthesized intelligence methodology, which is deliberately combining AI, powered AI research tools with human expertise and pattern recognition. So we took all of these massive data sets across industries, geographies simultaneously. We use advanced AI tools to identify emerging patterns, connections, all the things that are not visible or are difficult for us as humans. And we came up with this critical component, critical analysis. Then, applying our own experience, we could separate meaningful signals from marketing noise. And having worked many years in this field, I developed a few tricks to identify just smoke and mirrors, or something that is practical application. So that was our intention with this report. How do we come with something that could be useful for our clients and society as well? Yeah.
That's fascinating. And it's also interesting that you mentioned that you're harnessing kind of AI as part of your research methodology so as to help you better understand trends and developments and in AI, and also cut through some of the smoke and mirrors that characterize the development of this field. So can you talk us through then, so what were your findings? What were these signals?
Yeah. So I think you don't need to do a research to observe that the relationship between humans and technologies at a critical inflection points. We all can agree on that, right? And 2025, the business have access to these powerful array of technologies that they never saw before, we never have interacted before. And technologies or concepts like agents, intelligent interfaces, spatial computing, brain interfaces that were once part of those movies that I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, right now are something that are integral part of enterprise strategies. So what we're seeing here is in this report is this evolution of artificial intelligence to become more intuitive for us. In the past, we used to have technologies and you have to adopt it. We observe 4 signals, future signals. One of them is how the human interacts with the machines. The second one is how do we collaborate with autonomous agents, or we call it autonomous partnerships. The third one is immersive reality, and the fourth one is biological interactions. And if you allow me, I could tell you a little bit of
So start with kind of these human interactions.
Yeah, the human interactions might be the most obvious ones. Is okay, I have, let's say, my ChatGPT, my Claude, the flavor that you prefer, right? My Gemini. But we have observed that the relationship is going beyond just interacting and typing a query or something to search. It's how it's augmenting me. Like in the same way we made this report, it gave me eyes. It gave me brain power. It augmented on my direction. Right? One example is what happened when back then in the day when you have to learn, let's say, Microsoft Excel or Photoshop or any of those tools, SAP, you have to memorize all the tools, right? You made the tutorial, there is no menus. Once that you have dominated that, a new version arrives and you have to start all over again. But right now, AI is a new UI. What does that mean? That AI can learn those tools and then you move from being the user to being the director. This is what I'm expecting it. So AI is helping us to extend the same way when you're biologically, when we're eating something, you eat it, but your body takes care of it and makes it energy for you.
Right.
Something similar is happening here. This is what I want to achieve, to grow muscle, to have better cognitive power, to get full. And then you eat it and you delegate this. Another aspect of this is how can we, the way we interact is because the interfaces are becoming more intuitive to us. It's not that we have to learn this new menu, right? That was thrown at us, thinking that they know you, they know us, reading a manual that was not built for me. Right. But I can express my feelings, my intentions on my own way. And I think that's the first point of the relationship or the first signal that is called AI and human.
That's interesting. if I can just like follow up, just one kind of interesting question, because that what you're getting at there, and sometimes it's described in a negative sense. Like, well, on the one hand, we're losing skills that we would have had in the past, like how to navigate a city or how to do other things, because these tools make it so easy for us. But kind of what you're describing there suggests also there is a shift in terms of I don't need to learn processes that would take time and effort, like how to create a website, right? Which in the past, right, which would have required a certain skill set, and most of us would have probably just gone off and maybe like hired somebody to help build a website. But now I could just say, this is the kind of what I imagine the website to look like. I want it to have like a bar at the top. You want to be able to scroll down, right? And then from that, you're able to create something.
Absolutely. Like imagine the early days on computer science. Like we have to type everything in these blue-green screens. And then if you want to add a graphic or a picture, you have really to manipulate all the geometry on the screen to move it to another place, right? Right now, copy, paste, scroll. And we're maximizing that. We're making use of those technologies. I think similar evolution we will appreciate here. Just it will evolve beyond just Q&A or do something, but augmenting me. I think that will be the right evolution.
That's fascinating. And we'll get back to this later on about what that means for us as humans, as more and more of our tasks are augmented or made easier. On the one hand, right, we can achieve a lot more, but perhaps we might be losing something along the way also. Moving on to the next signal, right? So, yeah.
This second signal is what we call autonomous partnerships. That's a profound evolution of how AI agents and humans work together. And what makes this particularly interesting for us is the shift from reactive to proactive, where the AI is not just responding, but anticipating to you. Right now, if you have your most traditional assistant, it's there, right, waiting for you to give purpose. What do I have to do? Does it have a goal? But right now, you can delegate it. And one of the, let's say, the most common example is what's happening with using it to coordinate several tasks. Imagine you have an AI agent in logistics, and you can simply say, hey, handle my returns. The agent can autonomously execute the entire workflow from pulling the return request, create the shipping labels, scheduling the pickups, notifying the customers, everything without you having to wrestle with an API or manual process. That's amazing. But what is fascinating me about these autonomous partnerships is that can also help you emotionally. You may say, how? So imagine a call center, or imagine someone that has to do with sales, that most companies have to do that. How many calls can you make before feeling the burden of rejection? Like, no, we're in a difficult situation, it's not the right time, we're analyzing our forecast, our quarterly budget. It might feel heavy, right? But an agent can handle that. The emotional burden, right? Also the energy. So there's aspects that go beyond automating a task, right? Can also help you keep levels of emotion and keep levels of rhythm without burning all our efforts, right? You don't want like these boom, big bangs, and then everything fades as time moves forward. So I think a critical part about autonomous partnerships is this organization, this back and forward. I can push while you're, let's say, tired, and you can retake it from here. Like imagine cruise control, that your car has, but on steroids. So it's amazing.
That's fascinating. And it also gets back to what you had mentioned earlier about this kind of not just augmenting, but also this anticipation, the ability to do more, that this is going to be omnipresent in the field. And I know you have some more signals that you want to share with us.
Yeah, absolutely. We have this third one, we call it immersive reality, which is the blur between digital and physical spaces. What does that mean? Like, as we're moving or we're making technology part of us, this division is becoming or is dissolving, creating seamless experience that is getting the best of both domains. Back in when we did the kickoff or the presentation, the keynote of the Signals report, we said, imagine entering the matrix, doing or making the best out of it and getting out of the matrix.
Right.
Spending what do you need, right? That's why Neo can bend the time and space universe. So imagining that these environments can change to our wheels creates a different experience. Imagine what's happening right now in automotive industry. You go into your car, you have a fixed dashboard. It's there, it's static, it's not moving, it's there. The thing about this is that right now we're starting to see dashboards that can adjust to you, can show you the speed, can show you some other, let's say, analysis, some other telemetry that is important to you. Whenever you're in a relaxed mode, you want to see a blue wave with some music. All these kind of interactions are becoming more seamless to us. The space is responding to us. The space is giving us the chance to plan. Right? And also imagine this in the health industry. What does it mean?
Right.
Imagine a surgeon that can interact with another partner surgeon.
Right.
And instead of having to, let's say, manipulate your body to get you in a better shape,
Yes.
they can create a digital twin of you. They can even feel. How does it feel to manipulate a muscle without having to physically touch you? Because there's responsiveness, there's sensors, there's new technology that make that experience tangible for us.
This medical field example brings us to your fourth signal, which focuses on biological machine interactions.
Oh, this is amazing. I think this aims to, let's say, a little bit more into the future. The fourth signal represents a profound shift in the human-technology relationship. Because as we mentioned, the technology is becoming more intuitive. But there's many ways, a lot of, let's say, signals from us as humans. Back then, when we did the kickoff, when we did the keynote, I mentioned, picture this. Imagine that I'm having dinner with my kid, and there's one single cookie on the table.
Right.
And I ask my kid, can I have the cookie? He says yes. For those in the audience that are listening to your podcast, they said yes. He said yes. But imagine they could see my son, like a chicken, like a baby saying, yes. But
body language says, I really don't want to relinquish why to you.
Right. Absolutely. So that's the body language. There's many things that happens within us that maybe are difficult to express. So in the beauty industry, we're seeing these new technologies. There's this beautiful example. They connect a device, and let's say non-invasive device. You just plug it as a watch, and then they give you some fragrances for you to smell.
Right.
The body sends these signals. They can flare like fireworks and say, this is the fragrance that is more interesting for you holistically, right? So similar happens, imagine not only in the beauty industry, but imagine the body telling you, hey, you're feeling not good. Maybe you should go to the doctor. Or maybe it's a good time for you to study. Hey, how about eating particularly this food because it could make you good? So having a depth knowledge of us, of our environment, will augment also what can we do. Because right now we're in a video game. Let's say we're only seeing the last render. Right. We see the last part, even in colors, right? We see the infrared and ultraviolet, but we don't see the rest of the colors. But there's much out there that is happening. So the natural interaction, the body plus technology signal is telling you a little bit of that. And this is an opportunity for organizations to rethink how interfaces, how they can increase the experience and make them feel effortless, because they will align with human behavior rather than requiring humans to adapt to such technologies. Yeah.
This is interesting. And this kind of brings us full circle, right? If you look at kind of these four pillars, starting from like human AI interactions to autonomous partnerships to immersive reality to kind of these biological interactions, it brings us back to the introduction where you talked about your interest in AI and machine learning emerged from largely sci-fi, popular culture, growing up in Mexico. And then you've made references later on to the Matrix, moving on in terms of popular culture. And now, having described these pillars, I'm just curious about, you've been very optimistic, right? We've looked at these things in a very positive context. What worries you about AI developments going forward? Like, is there anything that keeps you up at night?
Oh yes, several things. Like I have this, I don't know how to call it. Let me call it a condition for lack of a better word, where I'm constantly analyzing the past and thinking about the future that can create multiple scenarios. One thing that keeps me up at night is the distribution of information. There's information that is out there, and developing these new AI assistants could limit the access to information for better or for worse, right? If I want to ask, hey, how do I make a nuclear bomb? Could be for good or for worse, right? Could be
Most likely for worse in that example.
for worse.
Right.
But the guys who are working, let me think positively, the guys who are working on renewable energy need to know, right? So there's this shift, like I thinking that things will be bad might limit the good people to do good. That's one thing that is worrying me about distributing information. The censorship, the intentions are good, but it's quite complex to distinguish where is the limit, where do I set the stop, where can I give you an open book to achieve greater things or to do greater harm. Another aspect that keeps me awake is I think it's important for us that participate and work and actually do something with technology to find a way to set proper goal management in the technology. We mentioned even during our conversations, Chris, Black Mirror, right?
Right. Yeah.
And sometimes my wife tells me, every time that you want one of those episodes, you start saying, no. And I say, why? They go, okay, why? You go, because we as humans, we are constantly evaluating the goal. I can ask you something, but if I feel I'm touching a delicate topic, I could switch it.
Right.
I could change it. But most machines won't. If they have a mission, like I don't care, eradicate this disease, they will keep going until they achieve it. So having controls, holistic controls, I think is a quite critical, gigantic task.
It gets us into the realm of governance of AI.
Absolutely, and not to make like a commercial, but I think part of the activities that you're doing, Chris, with all the organizations and let me call it evangelization.
Interesting way.
Policies.
Yeah.
Because it has to come. It's a lot of work, a lot of things that are so critical and important for today's technology landscape.
Although one question I have about the first example that you brought up is the danger that's inherent in sharing a lot of information in this particular space. But is it fair to say that the innovation space in AI is largely one that's transnational, international, there's co-creation. It's a very difficult space to control. And also there's so many different applications for these tools that are out there. How does one go about dealing with the problem that you had mentioned, kind of like weapons of mass destruction and AI?
That is quite a challenge right now, because if we remember, like back in the day, you could just put like a tariff, right? You could put like a block and this hardware won't reach the city because we think they're not doing ethical things. But how do you limit software?
Right. It's not like a physical product that you can have a safety inspection of in a traditional sense.
And in the terms of Edward Snowden, when he took this code and snuck it into Glass, took it out, maybe right now you don't have to do that. I only have to describe it, and my AI will replicate it. So I think right now the conversation is what's the right balance, and how do we allow to have more people working on AI so we could have leverage on the positive side. I think being open about it, allowing research, investing early instead of waiting that the wave passes, because it won't, is here. It's disrupting every industry, every part of the society. It's the horizontal, it's the new electricity, they call it, right? And I completely agree. So I believe right now, a more obvious element of collaboration will happen. And I think it's the only way to overcome catastrophes. Yes.
Right. And you bring up a really concerning cybersecurity concern that emerges from these technologies, and that's the ability to, you don't have to sneak data or information out using a USB stick or something like that, but simply that you can describe what you have seen again to an agent that can recreate what it is that you saw, which makes controlling information, securing information much more difficult going forward.
Absolutely. Right now, we're seeing a lot of creativity in many countries. We've seen the DeepSeek, that shake Silicon Valley, but they're coming back with their own answers. And I can rent some GPU spaces and do my own. Right now, we'll see like this new renaissance on technology.
Adel, despite your references to Black Mirror and science fiction, I also know that you're an optimist to certain respects. So what excites you about developments in AI going forward? What are big breakthroughs that we should expect to see that could have a transformative but positive impact?
Oh, wow. So we need another 2 episodes for this. So I like the possibilities of combining the physical world and the digital world, because that will allow me to be in contact with my loved ones closer, to share a conversation without having to explain myself in my own terms.
Right.
We could communicate in different ways. We could identify what is making us sick. Mm-hmm. We can learn and apply our creativity in other ways. We thought, if I could describe what is AI doing today, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, people would say that's not possible. But I think because we're, let's say, moving away for things that do not add value, and we're passing those to machines, we as humans are finding the next frontier. So for me, the most exciting part is the physical and digital world, this interaction. How do I move freely? We talk about quantum. I'm sure your audience have heard and have dual clicks about quantum computing, and we know about these entangled states. One thing here can be modified in Mars. Right? Imagine that we could be in Mars. I don't know how soon, but there's a lot of things to see. There's a lot of things to do. But for those of us that are in the today, quantum technology is still the way.
That's fascinating. So some elements from drawing on all 4 pillars, but really also immersive reality as the space that's going to change positively, like in a positive sense going forward.
Absolutely. Even the investments are huge in that sense, $1.7 billion in the coming years. That gives us the signal to what's coming next.
Well, this has been absolutely fascinating, Adal, and thank you so much for taking the time to join us on Age of AI. For our listeners, that's it for today's show. Join us again next time for another discussion at the intersection of law, society, and politics. Until then, stay human.